Hello everyone, my name is Liz. This is my channel Lizard Goats. Welcome to the story. I want to kick things off today and talk about this book called The Blue Fox by Sjon. I'm going to assume that's how you pronounce this name. I don't know, so I apologize if I completely butcher it. Anyhow, Sjon happens to be a rather famous Icelandic author. I've never heard of him before, but he's written 2 other books and some lyrics for Bjork. So that's pretty cool. And after reading this novel, I can understand why he's so popular in Iceland. Because it's amazing. It's just downright amazing. It's a very unusual novel. So if you're not into books that don't happen to be in chronological order, and involve things like a transformative vision quest about hunting animals, then it might not be your cup of tea. But it's most definitely my cup of tea. I read all sorts of books, and I love it when I come across a really unusual novel that just sort of blows my conceptions of the genre out of the water, which The Blue Fox did. Anyhow, I'm going to tell you a little bit about the plot. It is confusing. As I mentioned, it does not occur in chronological order. The time period is 1880s Iceland, in a small, really rural village, where we meet, I suppose you could call her the main character, Abba. At the time that we meet her, she is dead. So, one of the main things you need to know about Abba is that she has Down syndrome. And in this time and this place, it's a very, very stigmatized condition. She is treated subhuman in many regards. Not just by the villagers, but by people in her past. I'm not going to go into it. I will give you a little bit of a trigger warning. Some bad things happened to her in the past. Some very bad things. So, just FYI, be aware that there are some trigger warnings in this book. I would say small trigger warnings, because they're only mentioned in passing, but they are there. Anyhow, when we meet Abba, when she's dead, she's about 30. And we see her mostly through the villagers' point of view. And it's not a good point of view. But then, during her makeshift funeral by her one and only friend, who I'm going to call the naturalist because I can't pronounce his name at all, she's really humanized. And we learn about her interior life and her intelligence and her personality and the wonderful human being that she is despite all the travesties that have occurred to her in her life. And for me, that's the real heart of the story. That through her death is when we see Abba live the most. It's a retrospective. And it's a very personal viewpoint of how she lived. But it's what makes her story so special. And in conjunction to Abba's story, there's the story of the hunter, who's hunting the blue fox, which is where the book gets its name. This hunter happens to be the village priest. And he, like everyone else, stigmatizes Abba. And while he's hunting this animal, this rare, beautiful, mystic animal, the blue fox, he really goes on what I would call a vision quest. He learns... Actually, I want to say he doesn't learn anything. That's what I want to say. You, as the reader, learn about him. And kind of what makes him tick. And who he is as a person. Not necessarily a good person. But you learn that through his hunting of this animal. It's very metaphoric. Metaphysical, almost. And I'm not going to tell you how it ends. Because in the end, these 2 stories of Abba and the hunter can join in this way that I never expected and I loved, because it really just hits home and makes you think so much about how we as humans treat other humans who happen to be different than us. Make snap judgments and just don't consider what we say and do. Let's leave it at that. But I enjoyed this book so much. I loved it a lot. In fact, I loved it so much that while I was still reading it, I immediately went out and bought another book by the same author. This book is From the Mouth of the Whale, also by Sjon, same author. And what I really like about these books, and kind of the reason I bought them, is the covers. Look how pretty they are. You've got this sort of starry, nebulous background with this gorgeous ribbon-like font just taking up the front, and you've got these like detailed illustrations of a fox, a blue fox, and a green whale. Now there's one more book by this author called The Whispering Muse, which I'll probably go buy when I finish reading The Mouth of the Whale. I should say start reading. At some point I will read it. I'm not gonna say when, because I have no idea. But when I get around to reading it, and I get around to loving it, as I'm sure I will get around to buying the third book. But until then, and until the next book, I hope you guys enjoy your story as much as I enjoy mine. Have a great night. Happy holidays.